Okay, Dave, we have a very special guest with us today, Alex Kapp. You may know her name from acting. We're going to give you a bunch of great examples of the things that she's done. She's also she has a very unusual career. Should I say?
We call that a tease in the biz.
Oh, okay. I'll save it for a tease because right now it's time for the Minutia Men Celebrity Interview.
The following is a Tony Lasano podcast, an Opie show on the Radio Misfits Podcast Network. This is the Minutia Men Celebrity Interview with Rick and Dave.
Dramatic enough for you? You like that? Alex, are you there?
Oh, yeah, well, I'm here.
You were jamming. You were air guitaring, weren't you?
I was speechless because of what I just listened to, that opening credit. Yeah. I just have to wipe the tears off my head.
All right, great. Yeah. During her 3-decade acting career, you've seen her in shows like Friends. I know, sorry.
Wait, I think I just heard an ugh. Was that an ugh? What did you hear there?
We're older than you are.
Well, yes.
Yeah, we're older.
Anything you've been doing as an adult for 30 years means that you're just really old. That's all.
But when you have credits like this, I mean, you were in Friends, Seinfeld, ER, 2.5 Men, The New Adventures of Old Christine, where you co-starred for many years, and currently the USS Enterprise computer in Star Trek Strange New Worlds. But as we're going to learn in a second, not just an actress, she has another career which is just as interesting. Please welcome to the show, Alex Kapp. Alex, how are you?
Well, I am just fantastic. Thank you for asking.
Well, that's good.
You know what we ask everybody.
Yeah.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, Dave.
Oh, okay.
Dave, you're ruining
well,
the
then
mystique.
I'm not as good.
So a couple of months ago, we had Molly Hagan on the show, and she played a nun who was smitten with Kramer on Seinfeld. And now we have you,
well, that's thrilling,
who played George's girlfriend, Maura, on the show. Tell us about that experience, because, obviously Seinfeld at the time, one of the biggest shows in the world. How did that change your life?
Oh, it was kind of unbelievable, actually. I mean, it was the last season, so it was a huge hit at that point. I mean, it was as big as it ever got. And even the way I got the job was thrilling. It was just it was a game changer for me. And it actually kind of started off a whole bunch of all the other acting jobs because, once you do a Seinfeld, that's kind of the, the aspirational goal.
So what is the story of how you got the job?
Well, funny you should ask. So it was very rare, but it was a Saturday morning audition, which never happens ever, but it was Seinfeld. So of course you go. But I, at the time being in my 20s, didn't think through going out the night before and having quite a few cocktails. So I'm not really sure what I was thinking, but clearly I wasn't thinking much. And so I was a little unwell on Saturday morning. I mean, just the idea that I would ever do that today, so stupid and irresponsible. In any case, that's what I was.
I did that with the ACT, and that's why I ended up at the University of Illinois. So,
yes, see, that's what happens. And I like that you only took it once. So
exactly.
Why bother trying again?
Yeah, right. Good enough is good enough, Alex.
It's fine. It's fine. So anyway, so Saturday morning audition, I just remember I was wearing a silk shirt, which was a really bad choice if you're hungover. Anyway, so, and there was a sort of a hallway with all these women, probably 20 women. And I realized at the time that they were auditioning 2 parts. So they were 2 guest stars on that episode, but I didn't quite know that. And I was just sort of trying to keep myself together. And so everybody went in one by one. We all sat there. And normally you go in for an audition, you sit there, you go in, you read, you leave. Once in a blue moon, they'll have you wait and they'll kind of sort of say whatever. Anyway, in this case, we all had to wait. So it was my turn. I got up to walk in the room. And also, by the way, let me back up. There were a lot of famous people there. So by the time I walked in, I was like, there is no way in God's green earth I'm getting this job, because it was like famous actresses. And I thought, in the last season, there's no way they're going to hire me, but whatever. I'll throw one away. And
who are some of the names? Throw some names out there.
Oh, gosh, I will not.
People that you beat out for this role.
Yeah.
Were they hungover
too? Yes, they were all hungover, really hungover. No, one of the names I will say was Ileana Douglas, because I'll say that because she's actually in the episode, and I'll explain that in a minute too.
Okay.
So, but when I saw her, I was like, she was a big independent film star at the time, and I thought, well, there's just not, she's going to get it. I'm not going to get it. So I walk in, and lo and behold, it's Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld in the room. And I'm going to be reading with Jerry Seinfeld, which was like, holy shit, I can't believe I can't believe I'm hungover. What's wrong with me? So, and we started the scene, and he was just reading George's part. He was reading George, and I was reading Maura. And it was the very first time I said no. I think, he just says, I'm breaking up with you. And I just say no. And I caught Jerry looking at Larry, and they exchanged a look. And I can't describe it, but I kind of was like, oh my God, I think I just booked this job.
Wow.
It was just a weird little moment. But they looked at each other and kind of smirked, and I thought, shit, I think I just got this job off one word. So I finished the scene. They were laughing. I was laughing. I'm absolutely certain I told them I was hungover because I have a huge big mouth. And so I walked out and I sat down and I was waiting, and then everybody else went in, including Ileana Douglas. And so then Mark Hirschfeld, the casting director, who's a wonderful man, he came out and he said, Ileana, and before he even finished saying her name, I already grabbed my bag and was out the door. And he was like, Alex, wait, where are you going? I was like, what do you mean? You just said Ileana. It goes, oh my God, so awkward. Ileana, you come with me. Alex, you got the job. Ileana, you got the other part. And I was like, oh my God.
Wow.
Oh my God. And so at that point, I felt bad because then she was like, shit, I got the smaller part. And I couldn't believe it. And that was it. And we literally walked out. All the other actresses left, dejected. It's awful to be that actress. I've been it a million times. And then we just turned around and walked straight to the table read, 2 doors down. We were at CBS Radford, and that was it. We started at Saturday morning table read. So that was it. Walked right on to the job. And it was like one of the best weeks of my life. It was just fabulous. Wow. Every single bit of it.
But fabulous, when you said that the word no is the thing that clicked, if people haven't seen that episode,
it's great.
That was the whole point. He tried to break up with you. George tried to break up with you, and you just said no.
Yeah.
Right? So it was like the key.
Yeah, it doesn't work for me.
It was the key word in the whole episode. So you nailed that.
So,
right?
Yeah. So it was pretty thrilling. And it went really well too. To this day, people remember that because it is just so absurd that he's like, I'm breaking up with you. No, no, you're not. Oh, okay. And he just comes in so easily. He's just quits. He's like, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So you read with Jerry. What do you think you would do? Jason Alexander would read? Isn't that kind of weird that Jerry would read George's part? Why wouldn't George?
I mean, no, it is a little weird. I was surprised, I will say, but they were so the showrunners that it normally you'd read with the casting director or you'd read with, you might do a chemistry read with the actual person, but, I think they just wanted, their hands were in every bit of it because they write it and it's their show. So I think they just, it was surprising, but it wasn't that surprising, if that makes sense.
I have just one more question about this. That is, what kind of cocktails were you drinking the night before? Just out of curiosity.
Probably I was in my 20s, so probably something like Cosmos. I mean, it was the 90s, so some horrible thing with a lot of sugar in it is what I'm guessing.
And that was in New York, right?
No, it was here.
LA.
It was here. I'm in LA. Yeah. It was LA. Yep.
See, Dave, the show was set in New York, but
can they do that? Can you actually set a show and not part of that?
You can make it look like another city.
Whoa!
Can they do that?
I think we just cracked the code there.
That's incredible.
And a year later, you're like, okay, Seinfeld, Schmeinfeld. Let me do Friends, which was just perhaps just as big at that time.
Yeah, that was, and that was a little less fun only because I had a bigger part that then sort of got cut down for time, and so that was sort of disappointing. I'm like, so I kind of wanted it to be bigger, and they were also so hugely famous at that point that it was awkward being there. I mean, nobody was unkind or anything. It's just that when you've got a tight-knit group like that and you come in as a guest star for a week, it feels sort of, and I had a history with Matthew Perry, so I knew him.
Oh, that sounds interesting. I had a history with Matthew Perry.
It's not that interesting, I guarantee you he doesn't remember it, but he does. But but it was funny because there was one of those moments. He had said, "Do you want to go have lunch?" And I was like, "Oh, sure." When you're a guest star on a big show, you tend to go small you do your acting performance, but when you're not doing your acting performance, you kind of hide out in your dressing room because you're not going to be like, oh, hey, what's going on over here? Can I see what shots you're doing? Oh God! So you just kind of stay small and do your thing. And
hey, Jennifer, you want to hang out?
Yeah. Yes. Do you guys want to hang out and talk and run lines? Yeah, that's not what you do.
I can make Cosmos.
Oh God. So yeah. So anyway, he kind of said, let's go out. You want to have lunch? And I said, great. And then I don't remember the actual order of things, but it was just sort of vaguely humiliating. I think I went to his room, or I walked by. They were all sitting. They must have had like one of their dressing rooms. It was sort of where they all hang out, because that's what we used to do in Old Christine. It's like our room was the room everybody hung out in. And I think he said something to them like, all right, I'm going to go take where Alex and I are going to go have lunch or something like that. I probably didn't use my name. And then they were all like, oh, but Maddie, don't you remember we have that lunch we have to do, that meeting that we're doing? And it could have been true, but there was a part of me that thought maybe they were trying to, like, he didn't want to have lunch with me and they were giving him an out. Anyway, whatever it was, it might have been true or not, but I was like, oh, I'm not going to lunch with Matthew Perry. And so we did not. There you go. Wow. Not a sad ending to the story. It's really sad.
That's actually, that is very cool. Reno, I hate him now. I hate all of them for what they did to you.
You hate every one of them now because they're all horrible people. Patently false. Yes.
So after you, I mean, I think people probably know you best from your time with Julia Louis-Dreyfus on the show The New Adventures of Old Christine, and your character Lindsay was, one of the big characters. You were there for 5 seasons. That was a pretty good gig, wasn't it?
Oh my gosh, it was just the greatest gig of all. It really was. And the show was never a huge hit. She won an Emmy for it, but like we weren't invited, which was, I always thought was funny. We're like, cool.
Yeah, Jennifer Aniston, you remember that meeting we've got to do?
That's right. Oh my God. So yeah, yet again, just poor Alex. But yes, it was a phenomenal show. Unbelievable group of people, unbelievable experiences. Like, I mean, just even remember, it was incredible. I could just name a million, but one of the highlights of it was that I met Trisha O'Kelly, we played these two meanie moms, is what we were called, these bitchy.
But you were kind of nice at points too, right?
I was nicer. Yeah, yes. They really meaned her up. She was always like, the audience hates me, they hate me. But she and I ended up becoming truly the best of friends. We're like sisters to this day. And there's a whole backstory of that, which I'll tell you, which is actually really cool. But so she had a dressing room. I had a separate dressing room because that's what they do. And when Wanda Sykes came on the show in the second season, she was put in a trailer, we were at Warner Brothers, and she was put in a trailer kind of far away. And since Trisha and I were inseparable, and I mean, from the minute we met at the table read, we were inseparable. We never weren't best friends again. It was pretty amazing. And so Trisha was like, listen, I don't use my dressing room ever except to, poop. So I'll just come stay in yours. And so Trisha gave up her dressing room to give it to Wanda. And then she and I kind of shared a room because who cares, right? We're best friends. We're always together anyway. And then we started writing together in there and all that. So we had just a wonderful time. But everybody else on the show was incredible. Emily Rutherford, Clark Gregg, Hamish Linklater, Julie was incredible. Carrie Lizer, who produced, wrote, and, created the show, as a longtime friend, and she's just amazing. And it was just a wonderful experience, top to bottom. Just loved every minute of it. And I wish it had gone on forever, but it didn't.
That was five seasons. Right?
That's pretty good. And
that's
a good run.
TV, that's like, a lifetime.
Yeah, it was good. And there was a short season because we had a writer's strike then too. We're in one now. There was a writer's strike back then. So we had one shorty season, but it was just great. And subsequently, and this is just the addendum to that story. So Trisha and I have been friends for years and years and years. And about a while ago, she got divorced and then I got divorced. And then I moved to a different house and she had her house. And so in 2019, she said, I know you're struggling because I was paying just an exorbitant amount of rent for this house because I had to move in with my kids, blah, blah. So Trisha and I tricked out her garage, which already had a bedroom and a bathroom upstairs. And I ended up moving into we have a running joke that I say garage, she says guest house. But I ended up moving into her garage for 3 years. And thank God, because when COVID happened, there we were. I had my two now basically adult children who had to move into the garage with me. And because my younger daughter was still in high school, doesn't matter. anyway, and she has 2 younger daughters. So we had this incredible sort of co-living experience before and through COVID that kind of saved both of us. We ended up making like 42 YouTube videos, like these 2-minute videos about isolation. And my daughter edited them, and they're hilarious. And we had the best time ever. I mean, it was just incredible.
And they're on YouTube? Are these videos on YouTube still?
Yeah, they're on YouTube. I think they're terrible names and whatever, but they're really well edited. They're funny as all get out. They're called, I think it's just called coronavirus, because that's how early we started. Coronavirus isolation, Trisha and Alex, or something like that. But they are funny, and you should watch them. But it was great.
So you had just mentioned your daughter was in high school, right, when this was happening?
Yeah, I have 2 daughters. One was in high school, one was in college, and so my younger daughter graduated in the car, which was annoying.
Yeah, we had that with my 8th graders. My 8th graders.
Yeah, it was everybody suffered through that year. That was a weird one. So, and then my older daughter was in college, but came home for spring break and never went back because of COVID. So suddenly I was sharing a bed with my 19-year-old daughter.
Yeah,
It was fun.
I'm worried that in I don't know, 14 years, 12 years, planes are going to just start falling out of the sky and bridges are going to collapse because no one learned shit during that time in college or high school.
Yeah, right. The kids,
They just mailed it in. There was no education. I mean, and I'm a college professor, so I know firsthand that, we're going to have all sorts of trouble when they all get real jobs and stuff.
Yeah, we'll be gone by then. That's...
Yeah, well, don't worry. We'll all be dead because we're all so old.
That's the plan.
No, it's pretty crazy. I mean, I have almost stepson, and he was in, I don't know, 4th, 5th, 6th grade, and it was 3 years he didn't get a lick of education, nothing. That he just was. It was, these kids were failed. I mean, it was awful, and it was nobody's fault. It's just
Yeah, agreed.
Well, their high school years kind of sucked. So did yours in a way. I want to just spend a little bit of time about.
Mine sucked too.
Yeah. We call that a segue in the biz. Did you notice how I did that?
I did. It was really crafty. I'm proud of you. That was good.
So in it was 1986, and I remember this. So we're in 1986. I was 23. We were 23. You were you were 16.
Wow, we are significantly older than you.
You guys are way older than us.
Way older.
We like the term mature, Alex, but you can use old. That's fine.
I'm gonna. But so it's good.
So you were kind of catapulted into the limelight, let's say. I don't know if limelight's the right word, but in 1986, you were part of the notorious Preppie killer case. Now, you were not the killer. You were the girlfriend of the Preppie killer, who was Robert Chambers.
Correct.
For those of you of a certain age, we remember that because that was his... I mean, it was cover of
it was huge.
Cover of People magazine, and Hard Copy did a thing, and that was what everybody. I mean, it was like the Bobbitt trial. I mean, it was maybe not quite as big as OJ, but it was huge.
It was big.
And you obviously were dragged into this because you were dating, like I said, Robert Chambers, who ended up being convicted for being the Preppie killer. And this case had everything, right? It had sex and money and good-looking people and members-only jackets and everything, right?
Deck shoes.
Talk to us a little bit about that. I mean, good God, that must have been horrible.
I will say this. Yes, it was. It was actually, it was a game changer. So I was 16 and I lived in Manhattan on the Upper East Side, which is a very Tony part of New York City. It still is to this day. It's like where Park Avenue is and all that. And, but I never quite felt like I fit in. It was my mom had remarried my stepdad, who's now officially my dad, because he adopted my sister and me last year, even in our 50s. Anyway, but yeah, that's a really sweet story. But anyway, so I always felt like I didn't quite belong anyway in that world. I had grown up in it, but I mean, I was truly going to school and knew people like, Rockefellers and Coolidges and Roosevelts. And just some really old, sort of wealthy families who had houses in the Hamptons and Nantucket, and it's a very interesting kind of weird way to grow up. And it was also the 80s, so New York was a lot different. It was not very gentrified, so the Upper East Side was much different from other areas. Like downtown wasn't cool yet. It was kind of scary.
Right. And
I went to Brooklyn once in my whole life, and it was just a different time. So I started hanging out at this bar Yes,
Oh,
I was.
There's another
young
bar
teenager.
story.
Yeah, more bars for Alec. Well, now you kind of get why. Now you see how it got where it got.
Yeah.
So,
Maybe some of these are your choices. I'm just saying this right now.
well, I like to put all the bad things that happen to me on other people and make them other people's fault.
Okay, that's fine.
Easier. So, in any case, I had been hanging out at this bar called Dorian's for years, a couple years, and was in the in crowd at that point. Like, they opened the velvet rope for me. It's a little weird. I was probably 14, 15 years old, but that was more normal then. And yes, I had a fake ID. It was my sister's passport, and it got stolen and ended up at Bellevue Mental Hospital. That's a whole other story.
Wow.
But yeah. So, and I met this guy, and he kind of popped out of nowhere. He was incredibly good looking. Really tall, like 6'5", brown hair, these shocking kind of icy blue eyes. And he just pursued me. Like it was just I didn't feel like that was something that normally happened to me. So it was kind of like I'd won the prize a little bit. And he just knew what to say. And he didn't have to say that much because he was really handsome. And yeah, I was a 16-year-old. So that counted for a lot. And so we were dating probably from, I don't know, like this spring of my junior year in high school, early spring sort of. And he was a little older, 3 years older. I was 16, he was 19. And he just it was almost like being in a soap opera. I mean, he would say all these really things that like young girls imagine, cute boys saying to them. But there was this sort of kind of theme of, he would say stuff that didn't quite make sense, like little things that wouldn't line up. And my gut was sort of like, this is weird. I thought he said he was, going to be with his mom that day. Then it turns out he wasn't. Or, I was working in a drugstore, a little kind of fancy drugstore with like lipsticks and things. And a lip liner went missing and a pack of cigarettes. And my boss pulled me aside and said, "Did you steal stuff?" And I was like, I would never in a million years, which I wouldn't and still haven't ever stolen anything. But he had just come to visit me at the store, and he somehow stole a lip liner and a pack of cigarettes. Like, why does this guy want a lip liner? Like, just weird things like that. And my mom couldn't stand him. She always used to say he was too tall for our apartment, which I thought was really odd.
Hey, Mom, you might be missing the point a little bit on this.
Yeah, that may not be his biggest issue, but that's cool. So anyway, he would not show up to places. He would say he was going to be one place and not be there. And then, but I was madly, madly, madly in love. Like my first real, crush, I was 16. But, so we dated all the way through the spring and the summer. And because it was summer, nobody had school. So it was kind of a lot, later nights and all that. And sort of after a bunch of different stories, I'm not telling this particularly well, but after a bunch of different stories that he had told me, things just started to not line up. And I was ignoring my gut over and over and over again. My instinct was sort of screaming at me, this isn't right. But I just didn't want him to break up with me. And I didn't want to I could have just said no and whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So there was a night that he had come over and I had been out of town. My family goes away for about a month in the summer to Colorado. And I begged them to let me come home. And I don't, to this day, can't believe they did, but they did. And just as an aside, I came home from LaGuardia Airport with my suitcase, and I went straight to the bar and put my suitcase behind the bar. Like that's how sort of, it was strange. Like I didn't even go home first. So that's how much I was feeling like I had FOMO. So I saw him, he came over to my apartment, which would never have been allowed if my parents were home, but I was playing grown up. And then he was at sort of the middle of the night and he said, "I got to go." And I said, "Okay, well, okay, that's fine." And he said, I don't have any money. And I want to take a cab home. Can I borrow some money? And I said, "Okay, there's a $5 and a $50 in my wallet. Just take the $5." And the $50 was the money I had for the week, which is kind of funny, 1986.
Yeah,
but my
$5
parents,
worth.
That was it. That $50 bill. They were like, "Good luck, have fun. That should be plenty for you to eat and survive for the next 7 days." So my instinct, he left, and I just suddenly went, I'm going to check my wallet, and I did, and my wallet was empty, and I panicked, and I was like, oh my god, did he just take my money? So I called him. and no cell phones at the time. It's, again, 1986. And he answered. And this is all within 5 minutes. So there's no possible way he could have gotten home to his apartment to answer the phone in that short of amount of time unless he'd taken a cab. He didn't live that far. He lived about 15 blocks away, which is about exactly 3/4 of a mile. But he couldn't have run that. He's not a runner. That was not going to happen. So I said, hey, listen, I think you took the 50 and the 5 by accident, thinking that maybe he just sort of put two bills together. I said, I hope you didn't give the cab driver the 50. And he paused and he said, I didn't take anything out of your wallet. And it was like, oh my God, 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 he stole my money. And it was all of a sudden, it was just an avalanche that just hit me like it was a ton of bricks. I was like, oh my God, there's something wrong here. So I was horrified. The next day, of course, called him and I just wanted to resolve it. Certainly didn't want to break up with him because I was so in love with this kid. So I told him to meet me early at the bar, and early means 8 o'clock as opposed to 11, which is when we used to get there. And so I said, I need to talk to you because, you need to, whatever. In the meantime, and tell me if I'm going on too long.
No.
I was supposed to be staying with these friends of mine and their parents. That's why I wasn't supposed to be staying in my own apartment. I was supposed to be staying with my two friends who were twin girls, fraternal twins, lovely. And they were very Catholic family. And one of the twins had gone to Planned Parenthood to get, this is just whatever, to get birth control because she was had a boyfriend, call it, in high school, but didn't want her parents to know because they were very Catholic. So She went to Planned Parenthood and they give you a big paper bag at the time of all these sort of dental, like condoms and dental dams. It was just this stuffed bag of stuff. And she asked me to hold it for her. And I said, sure, I'll keep it in my bag. And I had my Gap purse and I my nylon bag. So I was carrying around this paper bag full of condoms and dental dams. And that's what I had in my bag when I went to the bar at 8 o'clock to meet him. So 8 o'clock goes by, 9 o'clock goes by. And then this girl kind of that I'd met once or twice, was sort of, I could tell kind of maybe talking about me, or I got that bitchy girl vibe sort of feeling with a couple girls. And I thought, what are they doing? I felt like almost like I was being laughed at. And who knows if that was true. Regardless, she came up to me and made some comment. And it was sort of odd. And she gave me a little friendship bracelet. We were all macrameing these little string bracelets at the time. And I had made one for him and she gave me hers. And I was like, why does she want to be my friend? It was weird. But I'm panicked because he's just not showing up. He's just not, it's 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. And finally around 10:30, he saunters in, completely ghosts me, doesn't look at me and goes and sits down at the bar. And at this point now I'm just livid because, now he's 2.5 hours late. Completely not acknowledging that he's stolen my money and that he's late. And it's, I'm ready to fight, not to break up, but just to be, cause a scene. And I'm very dramatic, as you may have noticed in this call, and also became an actress for it. So I walked up to him. He's at the bar. He was all surly. And I said, you're late. And he said, well, I had to stop and I had an emergency and you have no idea what it was. And I was like, did you want to tell me what it was? He said, my little brother tried to kill himself. And I was like, little brother, you're an only child. Like, what are you talking about?
What in the world?
And he's like, no, not my real little brother, my little brother from the Big Brother, Little Brother program. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, you are not a volunteer at anything. Like, it was so absurd. It was absurd. It made no sense. So I was like, you're just flat out lying to my face. This is crazy. And I said, you know what? And at that moment I realized, oh my God, I know what I can do. And in my purse, I grabbed that paper bag and I said, you know what? Use these with someone else because you're not going to get the chance to use them with me. And I threw the bag in his face and condoms and dental dams rained over his head.
And all the patrons
and landed on the floor. And it was like a John Hughes movie. It was like a record scratch moment. And everybody looked over and people were laughing. I mean, it was absurd, right? It was this absurd moment. I was furious, but I was, also really proud of my moment. And that was it. And I said, that's it, I'm done. So I left the bar with my friends early, like 1 a.m, which I never did. And usually it was 4. And I left because I was trying to prove my point. I'm done. I'm so mad at you. By the time I got back to my friend's apartment, I couldn't sleep. I called him at somewhere like 3 or 4 in the morning and said, okay, fine. Listen, just come meet me outside my building tomorrow. We need to talk. Because, of course, I immediately regretted throwing the things in his face.
Those condoms back.
I want those condoms back. So And he didn't answer. And I was, it was probably 4 a.m. And at this point now I'm starting to backpedal like, oh my God, what have I done? He's going to break up with me. Is it over? I didn't mean to break up with him. I love him. I made a mistake. Wow. Totally doubted myself, totally undermined my own instinct and self-worth. It was horrible. So the next day I brought Hershey's chocolate milk and cigarettes because we all smoked that back then, and waited outside my building on my front stoop for 3 hours. And as the clock ticked by, he did not show. He didn't show. At that point, I was just beside myself. And I went upstairs to my apartment, called my mom and said, I think I broke up with him and I didn't mean to. And my mom's weirdest thing in the world. She said, from Colorado, why are you in our apartment? And I was like, why is that what you're focused on?
Right.
But she had something clicked. Something was off for her. As a mother now,
intuition or something, right?
Yeah, it was. And I said, I don't know, but why do you care where I am? I'm sobbing and whatever. And so I fell to my bed. And then my friend whom I was supposed to be staying with called and said, you need to come over. And I said, well, I'm not coming over. I'm not going out. I'm devastated. And she said, no, you need to come over right now. Like, you need to come back here. And I said, I can't. I don't even have money for a cab. She said, my doorman will pay your cab fare. Just come over. So I was mad. I didn't want to go over there. And I showed up in a cab. Doorman paid the cab driver. And my friend is standing there in pajamas, with slippers on, because we were in high school. And I was like, what are you doing? You made me come all the way over here and you're not even dressed. Like, what is going on? And she had a New York Post in her hand. And I was like, what is going on? And basically on the cover of the New York Post, the girl who had made the comments to me the night before, she had been murdered. And I don't remember exactly whether at that point his name was in it, but it was very obvious. I can't remember, but I truly never in my life since this happened completely passed out, like just cold.
Wow.
Fainted. And at that point, it just like the whole world turned upside down. So he didn't show up at my apartment because he had already been arrested, because he went to Central Park with her after I left the bar, and they were having sex. And apparently he'd already been having sex with her and multiple amounts of other girls. And he killed her. He strangled her.
Jeez.
So she was found by a jogger just an hour later. I think he killed her at 4 or 5 in the morning, and her body was found under a tree behind the Metropolitan Museum. And he was apparently sitting on a wall watching as the cops showed up. He just sat there and watched, and then eventually made his way home. And in the early days after, the police came immediately to me, and it was horrible. It was awful because I had to start school in a couple weeks, and they would show up at my school and I couldn't, it was just awful. And so he, in the early days when the cops first showed up, they asked me if he had a cat. And I said, yeah, why? And they said, well, does this cat nice or whatever? I said, no, his cat's, I don't know, he's declawed, but he's basically, he had told them his cat had scratched his face. And so I sort of threw him under the bus because I didn't realize why they were asking, but I was still protecting him. Everybody still thought that it was an accident. And unfortunately, just because of the times, she was severely, for lack of a better phaase, slut shamed.
Yeah.
It was a very big case of blame the victim. And I didn't know her at all, and I wouldn't say we were even slightly friends. And she didn't make a great impression on me. But she was an 18-year-old girl who was murdered. I mean, she was murdered. Yeah. So none of us believed that until months and months later. But I continued to talk to him, which I deeply regret. He started reaching out to me from Rikers Island, which is where he was in jail, awaiting trial. And he started writing me, and then that sort of morphed into started calling me, and I've told the story before, but when he got out on bail, and the bail was put up by the owner of the bar, Mr. Dorian. That's another big Catholic family. These are all Irish Catholic families. Robert Chambers was a big Irish Catholic family. And he was staying for a time, and this is kind of the creepy part that I just found out about a couple of years ago. He was an altar boy for a priest named Thomas McCarrick, who was the
he just had to resign or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. I
mean, he did because he's now apparently saying he's got, he's dementia and stuff, but he was a child molester.
Yeah.
And when I did a documentary about this a couple years ago for the Sundance Channel, AMC, the fabulous women who directed it, whom I went to college with, they had uncovered the fact that he was he was an altar boy for a child molesting priest. Yeah. And this kid, Robert Chambers, his life started to hit the skids when he was 12, 13, 14 years old. Hadn't really had a lot of issues before that, but then started failing out of school and doing drugs. And it all kind of, I don't know the history. I don't know for sure, but it sure does seem to make sense to me. I don't know. It just seems weird, but it's no excuse, but it definitely I believe something must have happened to him because it's too weird.
Yeah.
But I went up to see him and I actually went to his apartment. Obviously didn't tell anybody. Told my parents I was going to go to see art at a museum. They should have known right in that moment.
Right.
You hate art.
Yeah, exactly.
Name
3
like
artists.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. So anyway, I showed up. He answered the door. I've told this before too. I was 16, right? So I was like, oh my gosh, are we going to make out? I was still really sort of taken by him. And and we sat down in his room, closed the door. His mom was home, but we closed the door, sat down in his room, and we were doing Mad Libs, where you fill in words. Sure. I don't even know why that is a memory, but it is. And as I'm sitting there, I look over and he's got his this sort of old pre-war wooden little desk. It's just this ugly little desk thing. And under it was just stacks and stacks of newspapers. And I kind of looked over at it and I looked at him and I said, wow, well, I guess jokingly, I said, well, I guess you got what you wanted. You're famous now. No. And he gave me a look and I don't know how else to say it except that I have never felt fear like that in my entire life, ever before since. I thought I was like, what have I done? Right. And I knew right in that moment what had happened was not an accident. I just knew it. There was something in this look that was so terrifying. And so I had to pretend I didn't feel that way. And hey, just realized it's late. I should probably get out. Meanwhile, my heart is racing. I thought it would jump out of my throat. And so I sort of backed up and opened the door slowly. And it was like a movie. I sort of walked out backwards. Okay, well, I'll see you soon. And where are you going? Well, now I should probably go. My mom, anyway, I'll try to catch you later. And as I backed out, he actually had an elevator that opened into the apartment directly. And I backed into the elevator and pressing the button, trying not to look like I'm, going to have a heart attack. And it didn't happen, but I swear as the door was closing, I almost pictured his arm just popping through the thing and stopping the door.
God.
Yeah. The elevator door closed. I got down and I ran home so fast, busted in my door and just sobbing and told my parents, oh my God, I went to see him. I'm sorry. This was a terrible thing. I'm sorry. And that's sort of where it all then it was done, Wow. Didn't see him again. And he called and I had to pretend to be my own mother. And said, if you ever call this house again, I'll have you killed or something like that. Because that's the kind of thing my mom would say. And,
we hate tall people here. Have I mentioned how tall you are?
Wasn't that what Jennifer Aniston said to you about lunch? She said, don't get out of this room or we're going to kill you.
Oh, my God. So that's it. And he ended up getting eventually convicted, but not of murder. He got 5 to 15 years for manslaughter. And it was a true travesty of justice because, he killed this girl. He just absolutely did.
Wow.
But everyone, he got girlfriends and groupies and had all these girls in bikinis around, people, it's, good looking killers are popular.
Oh, is there a thing?
I guess.
It's a thing.
Yeah.
But I remember it vividly seeing this. Almost to a point where I don't want to see this anymore. It was all over.
Yeah, it was everywhere.
Just everywhere.
It was everywhere. So,
it was all, it followed me for the rest of my life. Not really. There was a chunk of years in there where it didn't come up. But then this documentary came up and I thought, I've never talked about it publicly really. And I'm I'd already been writing when I got divorced. I started writing kind of copious amounts of things about my divorce. And it sort of dawned on me that there were some similarities, not with, nothing like that, but I've been writing down the story from my perspective, and it's going to be a book. So there you go.
That's okay. What's happening. Well, all right. Yeah. So you mentioned divorce, right? We teased this at the top of the show. You are a divorce coach, which is an interesting, just a career option that maybe people wouldn't have seen coming here. Tell us about how you became a divorce coach and what that means.
Okay. Well, it's funny. I've just recently decided to start calling it divorce management as opposed to coaching because well, don't worry because I'm certified as a divorce coach, whatever, but, bottom line is I got divorced in 2014 or whatever, it took a couple of years, but 2016 officially. And I have 2 daughters and it was horribly hard. And, as my own lawyer said to me, I did a bang up job. But it was hard. Divorce is terrible. I was married for almost 20 years and it was sudden and it's not fun. It's no fun for anybody. And when I finished my divorce, my lawyer took me out to lunch and he said, have you ever heard of a divorce coach? And I said, I sure haven't. And he said, I think that would be something you'd be really good at. So I didn't know what it was. And basically what it is, and the reason I'm calling it divorce management as opposed to coaching is, when you go through a divorce, first of all, often most people are pretty emotionally wrought. It's a grief like up there with death and moving and all the rest of them because it's a loss of what you thought your life was going to look like. And on top of that, you have to make these incredibly difficult decisions around your children, if you have them, and around money. So when you're emotionally wrought like that, it's really hard to make decisions anyway. It's called reptilian brain. You go into fight or flight mode. And so, just even getting out of bed is sometimes a chore. But then to have, either contentious or not, you're ending this relationship, you're worried about your kids, you're worried about money, all these things sort of hitting you at the same time. And basically what I do is it's like having a contractor. You would never just go build a house and like get lumber and start hammering nails into pieces of wood. You need someone who knows what they're doing, who's been through it, who can help you set goals, get things done, do your financial paperwork, talk you down off the ledge when you're feeling just terrible that day, or help you communicate better with the person that you're divorcing, help you communicate better with your kids, effectively co-parent, and try to create a new family out of the ashes of the old intact one. So that's what I do. It's like having a really good friend who is also an expert, if that makes sense. So it's a little bit of everything. It's emotional, it's financial, I refer people out. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a financial analyst, but I know a lot of them. And I sort of work together with all these other specialists to help people through the process.
Well, I would imagine you're up to this point where you've had so much trauma into your life when you were 16, and then you have this wonderful acting career. All of that has got to help you do what you're doing, right? I would imagine. I can tell how empathetic you are.
Yeah.
And
Aww,
no, you really
nice.
no. You're lovely, and I would imagine all of this. Yeah. How did George Costanza help you out with your? No, but in honesty, it's got to. This whole kind of evolution led you to this point, which I think is just so interesting.
Well, it is actually. I'm really grateful for all of it. Like divorce sucks. It really does. It's a terrible thing, and I was very hurt. But it's at the same time I ended up with my kids full time, and just because that's how it worked, I didn't have to fight for it. It just happened that way, and thank God. I feel like I got like this gift because my 2 daughters are so. And I'll even say this. The divorce and the murder allowed me to be a much better mother.
Yeah.
And part of that was my kids knew the story about the murder when they were young. And in part, it's because I don't keep anything. I'm obviously keep people's confidentiality like nobody's business, but I'm very honest. And I'm also very honest about my own frailties and mistakes. And I easily admit when I'm wrong most of the time. So, and I'm wrong a lot. And one of the things I sort of have taught my girls from the beginning is you have to trust your gut. You absolutely have to trust your instinct because it will never steer you wrong, ever. And that has been a lesson for both my kids. And they're in much better shape than I was at their age. Yeah. They're like excellent people, that one of them has an amazing job and she's just fabulous and smart and gorgeous. And the other one is at NYU and she is thriving and just spent a semester abroad and loves school. And she's smart and crafty and creative, and they're just amazing people. And I think they have benefited from some of the trauma in my life, if that makes any sense. Because we're just honest better. So
who else would have benefited from that? Matthew Perry.
Yeah, screw him.
He would have. He did not know what
he
made a bad choice. He should have stuck it out with me. I was awesome.
Well,
Really
this has
awesome.
been a fun interview.
Seriously,
I mean,
you are wonderful.
This
You
is
really are.
This has been a really great interview. Thank you very much, Alex, for being on the show. If people want to follow you, what is the best way to do that?
Let's see. I am real Alex Kapp on Instagram, and I guess that's kind of it. I'm done with Twitter. I'm bored. The whole thing is too confusing now. I can't even figure out what I'm looking at.
I kind of feel the
And
same
then
way.
my in case anybody wants help with divorce, it's Golden Rule Divorce Management. I made it a little complicated, but that's what it is. GoldenRuleDivorceManagement.com. And we'll find a link to those YouTube videos just because they're fun.
Yes.
Yes, send it
And
to us.
yeah, watch Star Trek. I am a sound-alike for the original voice of the computer, who was Gene Roddenberry's mistress and subsequent wife, Majel Barrett. And I was obsessed with Star Trek as a kid, the original, in high school. It was on at midnight in New York, and I would watch it when I got home from the bar, if I was home that early. And it was just a fantastic stroke of luck that I got to play her voice. So now I'm a computer. I'm the voice of the computer,
We referred to Star Trek as bong track when I was in high school. We would just get stoned and watch Star Trek, and I loved it. You know,
It's so good. It's so bad. And the original, my boyfriend is like, what is wrong with you that you watch this? It's terrible. I'm like, it's so good. Oh, I love it so much. But the new one is actually great. It's actually funny and kind of harkens back to the original. It's actually really good. So,
are there any tribbles?
No, there's no tribbles.
Yeah,
Not that I
too
see.
bad,
Maybe they'll come back though.
Okay.
That was a little-
something.
yeah.
That's a free idea. You can throw that out there because
You know what? I'm sure they haven't thought of it. So good job.
Oh my God, Jablonski, how did you not have thought of that before?
Brilliant.
Really, thanks a lot for doing this.
Thanks, Alex. Appreciate it.
And if whenever you have your new stuff, come and give us a call, and we'd be happy to promote whatever you needed.
That sounds fantastic. And thanks for having me. This was fun.
Thanks, Alex.
See ya.
Have
Bye-bye.
a good one.
Okay. Bye.
That's Alex Kapp.
Yeah. Pretty interesting.
Yeah,
life.
boy, I didn't think we were going to get that much out of that murder story. Holy
Pretty big
mackerel.
thing. I remember all of this. You
Yeah.
know, and how it was everywhere.
Yeah, it was. Well, we have people to thank. We should thank Brandon Herman for scoring Alex for us as a guest. Also, our executive producer, Tony Lasana with opishows.com. Opie is hippo backwards, OPPIH shows.com. We're distributed by Ed Silla with Radio Misfits. Great Talk Radio isn't dead. It just moved to a better place, radiomisfits.com. And we'll be back again soon with another episode of
Minutia Man Celebrity Interview.
The preceding was a presentation of Opie Productions. Find our other great shows wherever you find podcasts, including opishows.com. Thank you.
This has been a presentation of Opie Productions.
Tony, can you shut up?